Hey guys, so the miracle I'm going to speak about today is absolutely fascinating, and when I heard this miracle, it brought a few tears to my eyes. So it's with Saint Porfirio, which just happens to be his feast day today as well, being the 2nd of December. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you Saint Porfirio. It's this saint here, okay? So, for those that don't know, feel free to look up his bio. But I'm going to get into the miracle because it was a very, very long miracle which I had to translate and condense as well. So, in April 1985, there was a young girl, a 10-year-old little girl named Olga. And she was going through radiotherapy so she can shrink a cancerous growth in her head. The only hope for her condition was God and possibly some medical care in America. So a family member from Boston invited them over to the world's best children's hospital. In 7 years of being married, they had lost all hope of having a baby, and suddenly God granted them a baby, little Olga. But unfortunately, at the age of 10, she started suffering this. Now, we're also told that about a year and a half prior to this, the parents got closer to their faith, basically left Greece, and they've gone over to Boston for little Olga. So the translator tells us that Olga, when she went to hospital, every staff member treated her as if it was their own family member. And she was doing really well. But suddenly Olga, the 10-year-old girl, fell into a coma. So a series of tests were conducted, and they saw that the brain tumor not only didn't shrink, but it spread. And it says here, it spread so extensively in the brain that all hopes had vanished, according to the tests, okay? So they were left with two options. Do we stay in Boston so our daughter can die and then transfer her body? Or do we leave with a sick child on a plane? But then there was a few, I guess, complications flying with an ill child. On Sunday, April the 28th, 1985, and it was the Sunday of the Mere Bearers. So at 6 p.m., Dr. Shilito, his name, was going to talk to them about basically the situation of their child. Now, no Greek American translator wanted to take on this difficult task of translating, only because it was such a sad situation. So the translator that we get this story from says that he had the responsibility for telling the parents, and he was aware of the situation, but he never actually had met him before. He says that when they went into the office, the doctor said this: Olga, which is the 10-year-old girl, as you know, has a tumor in the third lobe of the brain, which is not operable. We attempted to shrink it with radiation. Initially, Olga responded well, so much that we had hopes for her. But unfortunately, the other day, she slipped into a coma, from which, as tests indicate, she will not recover. The parents were listening very carefully, he says, and the father broke down, crying, boiling his eyes out. Now, he also says that the mother tried to hold back her emotions a bit. So the mother asked the doctor, basically saying, look, tell us straight out what's going to happen to our little daughter. And he says, I have determined that Olga will not make it. She's slowly dying. And then the translator says that he dared to ask this. I mean, are we talking in a few hours she's going to die? Maybe in the course of the night? Or when will she die? And the doctor said she will not live through the night. So upon hearing these words, the mother said, so in other words, only a miracle can save our daughter. And that's when the doctor said, yes, I agree. Only a miracle is going to save her. Then this is what the mother replied to the doctor. Doctor, we want to thank you very much for all you've done for Olga. We may be humanly losing the battle, but we are preparing for a miracle. Either our daughter may get well, or she may become a little angel at the throne of God. Isn't that a small miracle? Do you realize what a good girl she is? we naturally are praying with all our strength that we only get the first option, the miracle. But if God should permit the second thing to happen, then we will accept that as a gift. What a beautiful thing to say. Because how hard would it be to lose your child? But her faith knows that the little kid will be an angel at the throne of God. She keeps going and she says, we have to turn all our attention to God. Our mistake is that we should have done that from the beginning. You see, doctor, we first believed in doctors and then in God. And that is why it is how it is. The translator says that what he listened from the mother was a statement of faith, her strong faith. And he says that it had a sense of joy when she was speaking. It had dignity, calmness, politeness, self-control, and a truth that came forth from her mouth and from her eyes. So he says they came out of the doctor's office and they had a bit of a talk and they got to know each other better. And he says that these are moments where people tend to bond and get closer with one another. So he goes back at approximately 10:30 at night, and Olga, he says, is still holding on. He also says that the parents, Mr. Costa and Mrs. Maria, they were calmly preparing for either one instance, whether she was going to die and go to heaven or whether they were going to have their miracle. But they were praying for a small miracle. So at 11 p.m., the staff brought sheets, bed sheets and pillows for the parents, like Olga's parents, that were going to stay the night. But the parents preferred to stay awake and to pray in vigil. And basically what he says is that they were speaking about miracles that have happened, which are common natural things. But they were also discussing eternity, like we talk about, he says, everyday life. Whichever one God would grant in this instance would be a great blessing for them. So the translator stayed with them up until 1:30 a.m. and he couldn't get enough of them. He said that in meeting these people, he met people that had true faith in them. So Olga now, the little kid, has made it through Monday, and he says that that night after he finished work, he went back to Olga. I guess they built a bond together to see how Olga was doing. And at that moment, that is when the parents had decided to go back to Greece with Olga and basically to allow their child to die in Greece. So basically, the flight was on Wednesday. If Olga was alive, another 2 days, it would be May the 1st, 1985, on an Olympic Airways from New York. Now, on Tuesday morning, which is April the 30th, the translator got a phone call from one of the other female translators, because as I said, they were like a little family in there. And they had actually spoken to her spiritual father, which was, at the time, Elder Porphyrios. Okay? Elder Porphyrios, which now we know as Saint Porfirio. So Saint Porfirio had the grace of foresight. And if you had seen my previous video with the World War III prophecies, Saint Porfirio also speaks about the World War III as well as the sleeper saint. Okay, so if you haven't seen it, it was the previous video in prophecies. So the interpreter says that Saint Porfirio was an internationally known holy man, and he sees things where the human vision cannot penetrate. He said to her that he would pray for Olga, but they should also pray alongside with him, okay, and for God's will to be done, because we can't argue with God's will, okay? At the end of the day, even if she died, she'll be an angel eternally. So even that's a blessing. The interpreter, though, said on the phone to this lady, just please don't tell the family, because you might give them some hope, and if she does die, you know, they might get a bit disappointed. So he says that Olga's now held through all the way till Tuesday, and again after work, he went at about 10 o'clock, I believe it was, yes, that night, to visit the family again. And he says that he saw something unusual in an American hospital. He says that he saw the mother, Mrs. Maria, and also Mrs. Vasilia. Now, Mrs. Vasilia was a Greek-American volunteer as well, okay? And she was like a mother to all these children. Now, he goes on to say that they were next to each other and they were saying a service of supplication. It was a supplication that was unknown to him at that stage. They had lit the incense, the incense we have at church, a candle, like this one here. They placed an icon of the Holy Mother, like I have here, okay, on the child, and they were praying on Olga. He says that he was sitting, his body halfway in the room and halfway out. And other nurses that went past actually could smell the incense. They were asking him, what is this? Do they belong to something, that we don't know about? And he responded, they belong to the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church. 15 minutes lasted this prayer session, and they had some little olive oil from a famous shrine of the Holy Mother of Tinos. For those that know, 15th of August, Panagia of Tino, an amazing service. And I've actually got a miracle that I will cover soon on that, which is astonishing. He goes on to say that he also had from the Holy Mother Virgin Mary of Canala as well. So they anointed Olga in the sign of the cross on her forehead, on her chest, on her right hand and her left hand. Now at this stage, the child is motionless. And he says, as soon as they made the sign of the cross, okay, on the left foot, Olga lifted her leg, put it down, and repeated the movement again. There was nothing else. The two women broke out in prayerful shouts. Holy Mother, to Panagia, to Virgin Mary, do your miracle, okay? And they repeatedly again, they did the sign of the cross while kissing Olga on the forehead, okay? But Olga still remained in the coma. So the mother approaches Olga, okay? And she says, do you hear me, dear Olga? And Olga nodded affirmatively. And she says, open your eyes, my dear child. And the child, though, unsuccessfully tried to open her eyes, but she couldn't, okay? So then the mother says, give a kiss to Mrs. Vasilia, which was the volunteer. And rhythmically, she moved her lips as if she was kissing her. So the interpreter says that the lady started to believe that the little girl was responding. But for some reason, whether I wouldn't say cold heart, but he had disbelief. And that's when the Greek-American volunteer, Mrs. Vasilia, said to him, do you not have any faith in you whatsoever? And he replies to himself, basically he thought, maybe she's justified in what she just said to me. And he goes on to say that he was a bit skeptical because he put all his hope in the doctors, and he realized that basically he was waiting for her death and that he had logic as his companion. He said goodbye to the family, okay, who was leaving for Greece. So he stayed in touch with them. So the next Friday, he actually called a number that they had in Greece, and he wanted to see what was happening with the child. The parents said that she was steadily improving, but she was still lethargic. We were going to do more tests on Saturday. So he said, okay, we'll call you on Tuesday. Tuesday would mark 10 days since they got the diagnosis of her impending death. So he started to call, but there was no answer. They assumed that Olga had died, and her parents took her to the village to bury her and allow them to get some rest. He was convinced that she died. So what did they do? They found a priest, a Greek Orthodox priest in Boston, and they read a prayer for the dead, for the deceased. And that was a prayer, he says, from inside their hearts. So the months went on. The month of May, June, July comes up, and they had not received any news, okay? Neither from the family or from Boston or anywhere. So he says, and this is, sorry, it gets a bit emotional here. On July the 8th, okay, as soon as he arrives from Athens, he was actually in London doing another job, okay? He decided to make another phone call. And he called Mrs. Maria and Mr. Costa. And he was thinking, you know, maybe they've returned back from the village. And all of a sudden, a little childish voice on the other end of the line picks up the phone and says, "Who is this, please?" So the interpreter asked, "Who are you?" And the little girl, says, I'm Olga. Okay. Okay, so he says, "You are Olga." And with embarrassment, he actually asked, which Olga are you? So she gave her whole name. And with a sense of excitement and suspicion, he says that he understood who she was. And then the little girl said, "The Holy Mother did her miracle. Olga invited me to visit her house." So the interpreter then asked for her mother, okay? And the mother said, "How great is our God," Mrs. Maria said to me from the bottom of her heart. So he ended the conversation and pretty much left immediately for their home. She says, "When I got there, a lovely little girl opened the door to me. Her hair had begun to grow back. She was a little hyperactive, impressionable, and filled with life." He asked her, he goes on to say that he asked a few questions to the little girl, and she was answering with joy. And he found himself just pretty much talking, playing around with a little kid, and he had been betrayed by his logic. He says that the life of Olga constitutes the strongest beating that he's ever received for his disbelief. Now, guys, this is amazing. Now, 25 years have passed. Olga has graduated from university. She gives joy and happiness to her parents. She's also acquired a younger sister, and she's grown up to be a young lady now. She made lives of the greatest scientists in the world. She taught the logic of proven statistics. She certified that whatever God decides negates the laws of nature. And surely in our days, the Lord of hosts lives. So this miracle was in a book that a metropolitan wrote in Greece, and this is how we basically got to it. So what a beautiful miracle that this beautiful Saint Porfirio and our beautiful Holy Mother, our Panagia, and God has done. Thank you so much for listening to this. Sorry, I've got to wrap it up because, yeah, it's a bit emotional, this story. So feel free, if you can, if anyone wishes, I'm going to put an update on the charity in Kenya. We've only got, I think, 3,000 to go to build our first church. And once we finish our first church, then we can move on to the next project that Archbishop Macario of Kenya has already assigned to us. So God bless your deed. And as you can see, everything ends here on earth. So if you can invest any kind of funds for the eternal kingdom, feel free, and your good deed will come up. As I said, it will be, you remember my words, it will come up on your judgment day. So God bless you all. Thank you and take care.